Ask 10 people what hell looks like, and you'll hear the same answer: fire, demons, eternal torment. Now ask where that image actually came from. Not the Bible, not ancient scripture. Most of it was invented by medieval artists, angry preachers, and poets with a flair for the dramatic. The original texts tell a completely different story, one the church spent centuries trying to suppress. Some ideas were too strange, some too hopeful. All of them were buried on purpose. Today, you're going to hear 16 facts about hell that got erased from history. This is forbidden knowledge. Let's go. Number 1. The word hell doesn't come from the Bible. It comes from an Old Norse goddess named Hel, who ruled the cold underworld in Viking mythology. When Christian missionaries reached Northern Europe, they needed a word the locals would understand, so they borrowed hers. The fiery pit you've heard about your whole life is named after a pagan deity from Scandinavia. Number 2. Jesus never actually said the word hell, not once. In the original Greek text, he used 3 completely different terms: Gehenna, Hades, and Tartarus. Gehenna was a real place, a garbage dump outside Jerusalem where fires burned constantly. Hades was the Greek underworld, a shadowy realm of the dead, not a torture chamber. Tartarus appears exactly once, referring to a prison for fallen angels. Translators centuries later merged all 3 into one word and called it hell. The nuance disappeared. The fear remained. Number 3. Before Christianity existed, every ancient culture had its own version of the afterlife. The Hebrews called it Sheol, a dim, silent pit where all souls went, good and evil alike. No flames, no punishment, just dust and forgetting. The Greeks had Hades, ruled by a god of the same name, where most souls wandered as shades forever. The Egyptians weighed hearts against a feather. Persian Zoroastrians imagined a bridge where sinners fell into darkness. When Christianity emerged, it absorbed pieces from all of them. Hell became a theological collage. Number 4. Eternal punishment wasn't always the doctrine. In the early church, a heated debate raged for centuries. Origen of Alexandria, one of the most influential theologians of the 3rd century, taught that hell was temporary. Everyone, even demons, would eventually be restored to God. This idea was called universal reconciliation. In 553 AD, the Second Council of Constantinople declared Origen's views heretical. From that point forward, hell became forever. The door slammed shut because a committee voted on it. Number 5. Medieval scholars didn't just believe in hell, they mapped it. Detailed diagrams showed concentric circles descending into the earth, each level reserved for different categories of sin. Dante's Inferno, written in the 14th century, wasn't pure invention. He was compiling centuries of theological speculation into a single coherent geography. The frozen lake at the bottom, the rivers of boiling blood, the forests of suicide, all of these had precedents in earlier Christian writings. Dante gave hell an address. Number 6. The punishments were grotesquely specific. Liars had their tongues torn out. The gluttonous were force-fed rats and filth. Adulterers were impaled on burning stakes. A 12th century text called The Vision of Tundale describes sinners being swallowed by a giant beast, digested and excreted into a frozen swamp, only to be swallowed again. The imagination of medieval monks knew no limits. They believed detailed suffering would scare people into obedience. It worked for centuries. Number 7. Hell has employees. Medieval demonologists cataloged them obsessively. The Ars Goetia, a 17th century grimoire, lists 72 demons by name, rank, and specialty. Baal commands 66 legions. Paimon teaches arts and sciences. Asmodeus governs lust. Each demon has a seal, a summoning ritual, and a job description. This wasn't folklore to the people who wrote it. It was theology. They believed hell operated like a dark bureaucracy, with hierarchies, territories, and chains of command stretching back to the fall of Lucifer himself. Number 8. Is hell hot or cold? Depends on who you ask. The fire tradition dominates Western Christianity, but Eastern Orthodox and early Jewish sources describe hell as freezing darkness. Dante placed Satan encased in ice at the lowest circle. The logic was poetic. Fire represents passion. Ice represents the complete absence of God's warmth, the ultimate isolation. Some theologians argued the worst sinners would experience both, alternating between burning and freezing for eternity, never allowed to adapt. Number 9. According to Christian doctrine, Jesus himself went to hell, not as a sinner, but as a conqueror. The harrowing of hell describes the 3 days between his crucifixion and resurrection, when Christ descended into the underworld to free the righteous souls trapped since the beginning of time. Adam, Eve, Moses, Abraham, all waiting in darkness for millennia. The Apostles' Creed, one of the oldest Christian statements of faith, includes this line, "He descended into hell." Most churches skip over it because it raises uncomfortable questions about what hell even is if God himself can unlock the gates and walk everyone home. Number 10. Some early church fathers believed hell might actually be empty. Gregory of Nyssa, a 4th century bishop venerated as a saint in both Eastern and Western traditions, taught universal salvation. He argued that God's love was infinite, that punishment was corrective, never eternal. An all-loving God wouldn't condemn his children forever. This terrified church authorities. If hell was empty, what was the point of obedience? What was the point of the institution? The threat was the tool. They buried the hope and kept the fear. Number 11. Books were burned for describing hell wrong. In 1329, Pope John XXII condemned a friar for claiming souls don't face final judgment until the resurrection. Jan Hus was burned at the stake in 1415 for questioning the afterlife structure and the Church's authority over salvation. The Apocalypse of Peter, an early Christian text with vivid hell imagery, was nearly included in the Bible but rejected as too graphic. The Church wanted control over the narrative. Competing visions had to disappear. Number 12. Real people were destroyed for asking questions. Michael Servetus, a Spanish theologian, questioned eternal damnation. John Calvin had him burned alive in Geneva. Giordano Bruno speculated about infinite worlds and a symbolic understanding of hell. The Inquisition executed him in 1600. These weren't casual disagreements. Questioning hell meant questioning authority. The punishment for imagining a different afterlife was sometimes death in this life. Number 13. Today, many theologians have abandoned literal hell entirely. The Church of England declared in 1995 that hell is not torment, but simply the absence of God's presence. Surveys show belief in fiery hell is declining even among committed Christians. Annihilationism, the idea that unsaved souls simply cease to exist rather than suffering forever, is gaining ground. The forever fire is slowly losing its grip on modern faith. Number 14. Hell exists in almost every major religion, but looks radically different. In Buddhism, hell realms are temporary, purifying, and escapable through reincarnation. Islamic scholars debate whether punishment in Jahannam lasts forever or ends when sins are purged. In Hinduism, Naraka is correction, not permanent residence. Only in Christianity did hell become truly eternal and inescapable. Endless punishment was a theological choice, not universal truth. Number 15. Some psychologists argue hell was never about the afterlife. It was about social control. The medieval church needed obedience from populations that couldn't read. Hell became projection. Torture chambers, public executions, plague pits, all reflected as divine justice waiting after death. Fire and chains and eternal surveillance. The imagery mirrored the brutal world that created it. Power structures dressed as theology. Number 16. Hell never really ended. It just moved. The infernal architecture shows up in dystopian fiction, in prison systems designed for suffering rather than rehabilitation, in surveillance states where no thought goes unmonitored. The fear of eternal judgment became the fear of permanent records, of being watched forever, of mistakes that follow you to the grave. Every generation builds its own hell. The pitchforks change shape, but the terror remains. If you made it this far, you've heard 16 things most people never learn. Tell me in the comments which one surprised you most. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because next week we're going even deeper into the stories they deliberately buried.